Yes, guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I am Sean Butler. I hope you are all happy and healthy, doing the things you love with those that you love doing them with. It's been a while since I've been out. It's very windy. I do have the mic pop on, so hopefully it's not too bad. Bugsy Malone's over there. She's searching for a ball. Please do me a favour, guys. Hit the like button on the video if you enjoy it. If you even hit it anyway. You know what? Please hit it anyway. I really appreciate it. It really helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Even if you have, double check you still are. Hashtag YouTube shenanigans are afoot. Hit the notification bell and drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts on this one. And I really do want your comments on this one because I think this is a really interesting story that I've been reading. And we spoke about it yesterday on The Devil's Advocate with Johnny and Dave. Dave brought up a quote from Ange that I hadn't seen. It came out a few days earlier. It was on Football London. I'll put it on the screen so that I'm not going to paraphrase it too badly. But in a nutshell, Ange was asked about his summer transfer plans, and he said that there's still a lot of work that needs to be done this summer. That work is already going on. It's out of his hands at the moment, which in and of itself is something we have to discuss. But he said that there's loads of work still to be done, a lot of transition, and that he thinks it's going to take more than just this window. So going into January, and when Tottenham traditionally do at least 5, 6, 7 pieces of business in the summer, normally, somewhere around there, then is he talking about 8, 9, 10 more transfers into the club? And if you want those coming in, then you have to have players going out. Now, we know we've got lots of players on loan. That clearly, most of them are not going to have full-time first-team plans in the eyes of Ange. We have young players that clearly will do at some, or you'd hope would have the opportunity at some point. But when you read that, it kind of really shocked me a little bit when I first heard it in real time on the live stream. And it was only supposed to be a 5-minute conversation, but we ended up chewing the fat on it for an hour. And I really want your takes on this because I don't know how to feel about it. I'm a little bit surprised that he thinks there's that much work to do when if you look at the first team, the vast majority of the first team have been in the club only the last couple of years. You know, Destiny Udogie, Pedro Porro, Van der Ven, Vicario, Maddison, Papsar, Brennan Johnson. You know, you have to go a couple of years back to find Romero, and you know, even RICHARLISON's not been here very long, only 18 months. Kulusevski's only been here 18 months. So the vast majority of the first team have been here a short time. And then the players that haven't been, in players like Sonny, for example, you know, they're like mainstays, part of the furniture and really important, probably one of the most important players for the football club. So you start to scratch your head and say, well, what's he talking about? Is he talking about wholesale changes to the first team? Or is he talking about, you know, just getting rid of the players that are out on loan, like the Ndombele's and the Troy Parrots and those sorts of players that maybe are never going to, or probably are never going to make it at Tottenham Hotspur? And I feel like it's probably the former. I feel like reading into that, he's saying to get the squad where I want it for the players that I need for my system, there is a lot of work to be done. And that to me, again, I'm asking for your takes here, but that insinuates to me, and reading between the lines, that maybe he's looking at some of the first team players that have been signed recently and thinking either buyer's remorse or there's square pegs for round holes. And, you know, for my system, we need very specific round pegs for round holes. Now, I've been talking about from the summer. Before Ange managed his first game, I said, if you're looking at Callum McGregor and that's the key cornerstone of his Celtic team, then who is that player in the Tottenham team? And I don't know if we have one. I think we've got a lot of players that are not too dissimilar from each other. None of them are really great fits for the 6. None of them are really great kind of fits for the 8 either. Papsar is probably the best version of, obviously, with his mobility. But you look at Højbjerg, and despite his stats being very healthy for the year, or for the last 365 days, and in fact, when I was on the Y-Scout tool, dialing up all of the filters to get what my version of a perfect 6 would look like, his name was right at the very top of the list, alongside people like Camavinga and stuff from Real Madrid. But to me, Højbjerg doesn't have the pace, right? He hasn't got the mobility, which is a key crucial area. He's already come out and said his words yesterday or the day before on international duty, basically throwing Ange under the bus. You'll have to ask Ange why I'm not playing. I go to bed every night, you know, with my head resting very lightly on the pillow, knowing that I'm trying my best. It's over to Big Ange. He's not happy. That much is clear. And I think he's trying to force his hand this summer. Now, you know, with the exception of maybe one superstar member of the Tottenham community in Queen Ellie, you know, most people would be probably on board with the idea. They're not going to die on the sword of saying that Højbjerg should be at Tottenham going forward if he really wants to leave. You know, he's been a great contributing element to Tottenham since he's been here. He's been a workhorse and he's a very good player, but he's probably not a good fit for this system going forward because of his lack of mobility. Although most of his game is very good, and when he comes off the bench, he's been pretty impressive. So maybe Ange is talking about players like that. But you know what the problem is when players talk out and throw their manager on the bus in the effort to try and force the hand of the chairman, Daniel Levy's going to look at him and recognise his talent, recognise his age, recognise his contribution, recognise his stats, recognise his international position, recognise his leadership capabilities, and say all of that, despite the fact he's got 1 year left, compounds on each other and ultimately comes up with a price tag that's not insignificant, it's meaningful, despite he's got 1 year left. And we'll have to see whether or not a Juventus wants to come calling, whether there can be a player swap deal for Illing Jr. or whatever. I don't want to get onto that today. But my point is that if Højbjerg thinks he can force the hand of Daniel Levy by talking, whack about the manager, well, Daniel Levy's hand is a pretty strong hand to force. That much at least we can say and probably agree on about Daniel Levy. What about other players, though? Is he talking about players like Ben Davies or Emerson Royale or Fraser Forster? Is he talking about players that you'd be hard-pushed to find too many fans in the fan base that would die on the sword or that are married to the idea that these players should be a part of Ange's squad? Well, if he's talking about them, then maybe it's not such a kind of scary consideration to see wholesale changes. But what if he's talking about players that have more meaningful positions in the first 11, that have more, I guess, sycophantic fan base concepts where lots of fans will die on the sword that these players are brilliant and worthwhile and contributing to the effort, and that if you don't like them, you just don't understand the kind of intrinsic value or the kind of intangible areas of value that they add. Players maybe like, I don't know, a Rodrigo Bentancur. What happens if Ange says he's not the right guy? What about a Kulusevski? RICHARLISON? A lot of people love RICHARLISON. A lot of people don't. I'm not a massive fan of him. And I will talk about RICHARLISON in a second because he had a very sad update, a video that came out about his struggles, and I'll come to him in a moment. But what about Pedro Porro or Christian Romero? What about players like that, where Ange might be looking at them and thinking, they're not the perfect fit for what I need? How often this season have we been linked with, despite signing Mickey van der Ven, the links to centre-backs of top-tier quality continue? And a lot of the speculation in the press is that maybe that means that Romero might want out. Maybe Real Madrid might come calling, and if so, he'll want to leave. Of course he will, right? Everyone wants to go and play for Real Madrid, and maybe Ange is okay with it. I don't know. I'm not suggesting I know either way, and I'm not even trying to plant the seed that that's reality. I'm just speculating with hypothesis around what he means when he says, I need a lot more work. There's a lot more work to be done to get my team the way I want to play. And wherein lies the problem for me, or the concern for me, is when he says, at the moment, that's in other people's hands. And again, we spoke about this yesterday on the Devil's Advocate show. I think we all agreed, which is a rarity. Dave, Johnny and I usually have, different takes. But we spoke about Big Ange and the fact that he's got a very specific, very nuanced, very unique style of football. Right? His tactics are not really that similar to many other players or teams or managers around the Premier League or Europe. And yet he doesn't have specific coaches that he goes everywhere with. He'll go to another club and just inherit whatever he's offered, which is a little bit odd when you're not a generic manager that needs generic coaches. You're very specific, and I would have thought you would have kind of found people that understand your system, and so there's less need to teach them how to teach the others your version. But if he's also that specific guy who has that specific system, then is there other concerns, and let me know if you share these, around people that don't understand his system quite like he does, finding the players and doing the work for this massive next version of a transition that we're apparently about to go through? You would hope, again, you hope, and you would imagine that he is, spoken to these guys, Paratici and Langer and everyone, and has transitioned the sorts of players that he needs. And again, I asked Dave and Johnny this, whether that really means that you're happy with handing over the keys to Tottenham's next 5 years to a manager who has traditionally only been here in most clubs for 2 years. You know, everywhere he's gone, he's been there for a couple of years and then moved on to the next challenge. But when you sign players for specific manager types, you're signing them on 4-year deals, 5-year deals, especially young ones, sometimes slightly longer than that. And so again, the question I was asking Dave and Johnny, and I'll ask you guys as well to drop a comment, let me know, is, you know, how much, if you're someone who is 100% behind Ange, 100%, where criticism of him is short-sighted and, you know, not taking into context the fact that he's only been here 7 months and it's a new system and so much transition has happened and yada, yada, yada. If you're someone that believes like that, then will your patience be tested with the idea of handing over the keys to the kingdom to make him go and get all of the players that he wants for his system that we'll have to sign for 4 or 5 year deals, even if you know that in all of the historical data suggests that he won't be here for that length of time himself. And that given that he has a very unique style of football, if and when he does eventually leave, the next guy in probably won't replicate his system. You would hope that the next manager off the cab rank will be someone that continues the philosophy of front foot football and attacking-based football. But it'll be a very, very big surprise if the next guy comes in, plays exactly the same way with double inverted fullbacks and, you know, wings that play FIFA settings and all that sort of stuff. So again, this is the complication in football. One of the sort of juggling acts, the plate spinning acts, is the club have to keep one eye on the future. The club always have to look for the young talent because the economics of football make it a priority these days. But at the same time, you have to give the manager what he wants. You have to fully back the manager in whatever he asks for, knowing that statistically, unless you're a Jurgen Klopp, an Arsene Wenger, an Alex Ferguson, a David Moyes, or a Pep Guardiola, and when I say David Moyes, I'm talking about the Everton version, then in all likelihood, your manager will be gone and the next manager will be gone before the first manager's fully backed players have finished their first contract. Food for thought. And I'm interested to know how you guys all feel about what he said. I thought we were almost there. I thought, you know, a 6, a striker, a winger, a backup left back, a replacement goalie, and we're good. But he's talking about needing another 2 windows at least to get it done, which is suggesting a lot more than that. And again, just to reiterate, the question I ask you is, I'm sure you're all okay if he's talking about players that everyone's okay with not seeing around that much longer. But what about players that are more first team? What about a Bentancur? What about a Kulusevski? You know, what about a Sonny? What happens if that's what he's saying? Time to move on. Cash in on Sonny. I need someone that's more specific, that's younger, that's more mobile, that can do everything up the top end. I don't know. I'm not suggesting we should be getting rid of these players. I'm just asking the question. What about a RICHARLISON? And herein is the last thing I'll say to you guys. I'm sure you saw the video of his, you know, sad interview where he was crying and talking about the significant mental health issues that he's going through. You know, I'm someone that often feels like I never know how to handle the mental health conversation because, you know, I'm someone who has massive sympathies for people that struggle with invisible enemies, right? Invisible demons. But at the same time, I do believe that society can lean into things a little bit. You know, it's the new version of a bad back, to get out of work sort of thing. That's not to say everybody is taking advantage of it, but some people do. But I don't think it is the case with Richie. I genuinely do think that Richie has massive demons. I think he is really suffering. And I empathise and I sympathise because, you know, this guy has so much love and support from the fan base. He has a life that 99.99% of people in the world would do anything to have, and yet it's not making him happy. If anything, it's probably the reason why he is unhappy. The advantages that it has provided him has surrounded himself with people that he perceives to be, you know, bloodsuckers and that are not there to support him but are out to get him. And I really hope that he gets past his demons. Clearly, the video was very emotional. He's an incredibly emotional guy. And I think his physical injuries that he suffered are nothing compared to the mental torture that he clearly puts himself through. And I really do hope and wish the best for him. I honestly do. I'm not a fan of him as a football player for Tottenham. I've made myself clear about that. And I've often even said in the past about him that he's an excuse merchant. He's always got some reason why his poor form is not his fault. But putting all that stuff to one side, when you see someone having a kind of a breakdown on camera, it's tough to watch, and I really do hope that he gets the help he needs. Putting that to one side, though, guys, I'm not entirely sure how to suggest this, but I don't know if Tottenham are in a very difficult position right now with that, right? Because if you were to look at it from a selfish Tottenham perspective, and Tottenham is my first priority, then I don't think that you can have a guy who is quite so emotionally uncomfortable leading your line. I think there's too much at stake for the football club. I think that there's too much responsibility on a player who is massively struggling with demons and has too many plates to spin and too many balls to juggle in his life. And football at Tottenham is maybe not his priority. He's already said this week that his country is more important than his club anyway. So Tottenham, if I'm Daniel Levy, if I'm Ange Postecoglou, I want to show the support. I want to be empathetic, but I also, you need to keep one eye on the bigger picture around what's best for the football club as well. And for me, I feel like he needs a break from football. But then you've got a contract, you've got an asset with an amortization and a diluting value as the contract dies down. If you do the right thing and tell him to take time off, then he might not want to do that. If you take him out of the team because you think it's in the best interest of the team and the player to take himself out of the Goldfish Bowl, then he may resent that and say that the best thing for me is to be playing. But then you're kind of having your team 11 and Ange's personal choices of what's best for the football team and best for the competitions we're in, hand-tied by almost like an emotional blackmail. And so I don't really know what the solution is here. Maybe the best thing for all concerned would be for him to move to a league where there's less of a spotlight and less pressure. And maybe that's me just talking from my personal desires, because I want Tottenham to have someone who is a better footballer and also someone who has more resilience as a temperament. But I know this sounds unreasonable. Maybe you're going to say I'm cold-hearted, and I'm not trying to be. But I am just trying to give you my opinion on what's the best interest. And I feel like Tottenham are going to be in a very difficult position. The players in a very uncomfortable situation. And, I'm not an expert in any of these things. I'm just an armchair football fan who, is trying to chew the fat with you guys. So I want what's best for him, and I don't know what the right answer is. But I feel like there will be very tough conversations around what that looks like. Let me know your thoughts, guys. If I've come across insensitive, then that's not my intention. Let me know if you agree. Let me know if you've got an option or a suggestion, because I'm not sure if the best resolution for Richie's mental situation, mental struggles, is to continue to play him in the team and placate those issues. Maybe there's more work that needs to be done off the pitch. Anyway, like, subscribe, and comment, guys. Let me know your thoughts on the players. Bugsy, shut up! Let me know your thoughts on Ange's comments. Let me know your thoughts on Richie. How would you do it? Who is he talking about when he says there's a lot of work to be done? Cheers, guys. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, bye-bye.